Welcome to the episode 51 of the Screw Being Unhappy podcast. I am Zuzana Mukumai, and today I am talking to Kryštof Ekl. Kryštof is a Notion consultant and productivity coach. He helps his clients go from a state of overwhelmed busyness to calm execution of the work that really matters. His long-term goal is to help organizations to adopt the self-managed model of organizing and become places for the cultivation of not only knowledge and skills, but also character. Hi, Kryštof. I am excited to have you and welcome to the show.
Hello, excited to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
And let's dive in. For 4 years, you have been using Notion, and recently you started helping your clients with Notion workspaces to adopt better habits and productivity techniques. And you two have also, as me and people who are listening, fit in different countries, exciting ones. So, can you tell us a bit more about your story and what brought you to be a productivity coach and a Notion consultant?
Right. Well, in a nutshell, I used to struggle with productivity a lot back when, early 20s and around then. So since then, I was like looking for ways to motivate myself better, organize work better. And also, I always had this kind of mindset, like looking for the kind of like deeper, more universal systems that you could, or skills that you could train yourself in that would then help you in all the areas, right? So if you can learn to organize and plan your work better, that will help you with any kind of work. If you can learn to learn better, then yeah, that will help you in any area. So that led me here to this broader area of productivity. And then yeah, in 2020, I just came across Notion and I got in work the opportunity to like really start studying it, building workspaces, and I've been using it ever since. Because Notion, yeah, it's like it's so flexible. Already, like when I first came across Notion, I was keeping my notes in Evernote and my tasks in Trello. And what immediately like enchanted me was that I could like start combining what I like the things that I had to separate. Now in Notion, I could have them in the same view. And yeah, since then I've been only getting better, exploring Notion deeper. You never get bored because they always keep unleashing new features. And more recently, I always knew that I wanted to give entrepreneurship a go. And thinking on that, realizing that okay, like this is by far the most easily monetizable skill, like the thing that I actually already spent hours on, yeah, crafting workspaces and talking to people about productivity. So that's how I ended up here.
And because today we are talking about the topic how tools can help us to be more productive, and we mentioned Notions a couple of times now. And just in case some people who are listening, they didn't hear it before, or maybe they heard the name and they know it's something we can use for productivity, but they don't know exactly. Could you just summarize quickly for us what Notion can do to us and how is that connected to our productivity?
Mm-hmm. Notion, huh. It can be a bit difficult to properly like describe it, but what I usually say is that it's a workspace design tool, which can sound very general, but that's the thing. Like Notion is very flexible, so you can build like many different sub tools within it. So the most common use cases would be note taking or task management, work management, CRM. The point is that you can really build it almost for any use case, at least to a certain degree. And so the key value proposition of Notion, how it can help you, is that um, it's a tool which can kind of adjust to your specific workflow, your working habits and preferences, rather than the other way around, right? Like most tools are not as customizable. So you kind of have to do them the way the tool wants you to do them. But with Notion, you can really tweak it and design it to fit it perfectly to your habits, your workflow, your preferences. And because of this flexibility, it can be a bit overwhelming But that's where Notion consultants come in.
And we are going to go into it. I'm also very curious because recently I have been playing again with Notion a bit more precisely because of the fact now I figure out system that works for me, but each thing is in different place. So I'm giving it another go because having everything in one place might be really useful. Before we dive into the specifics, I wanted to ask you a bit general question. And that is, what is your take on the role of online tools in improving our productivity? Because I can imagine like lots of people can be still pretty old school. I still use the old table calendar and I use combination of online and offline tools. So why tools can improve our productivity and why perhaps that's a thing we can look into if we really want to use our time wisely.
So I like to think about, systems in general, especially like systems for productivity, in terms of three main elements. One main element would be the framework. And so that could be, just like a broad model of the steps that you need to follow for, executing whatever the system is about. So for example, with something as simple as note-taking, right? Like, let's say you want to go to a course and you just want to learn from it. So the framework could be something, okay, I have to first take the notes, organize them in a way that I will later find them, and then I actually have to study them, right? And so that would be just three simple steps and like a very simple framework. So that is what I call the framework. Then the second element, that's, let's say, responsibilities or duties. Like that's the things that you actually have to do that no tool can help you with, right? And so in this context, that would be you actually have to go there and take the notes, right? And then later on, you actually do have to study them yourselves. But then there's the tools element, that's the third. So we have frameworks and we have, let's say, duties and tools. And the tools, I like to say that their role is to make the framework obvious and the duties easy. So it kind of, the role of the tools ideally is to remind you, hey, these are all the steps that you should be following. And then also make the steps easy, right? Because if something is difficult, we need much more motivation and are much less likely to actually do it. So and also obviously if you don't remember to do something, well, then you also won't do it. So a well-designed tool, I think, can help in these ways, right? Like it won't do the work for you most of the time, but it can make it significantly easier by first reminding you, hey, these are the steps that you need to follow. And then, just like making it a little more accessible, a little easier. So
this is great, and I love it that you put it in this way because I never thought about it in this way. And the two things you are mentioning, the reminders, because if we want to do something, we have to remember, and sometimes we don't do something because we simply forget. And the easiness, I keep saying that to myself and to my client all the time, like that naturally we are lazy human beings, and if something is difficult, we are not going to do it. So if we want to do something consistently, we really need to make it easy for ourselves. So I really love that you put it in this word, that the tools can help us to remember what we are supposed to do and to make it easier for us. So I think that's a great starting point, and the point when people will like start listening as like, oh, maybe that's something I can start using to make it even easier for myself. And as you said before, Notion can be very flexible compared to the other tools, and it can be very overwhelming. And that's exactly my experience. Some time back, I started using Notion for creating my content library that didn't really work out, and now I'm looking into it. And last Saturday I spent 1.5 hours trying to do things, and then after 1.5 hours I was brain dead because it felt so overwhelming. And it's the same with many tools, I feel, that before we understand how it works and before it starts working for us, we need to invest in this learning and this kind of overwhelmed state to figure out like what it can do for us. When it comes to Notion, and maybe if you want to be general, even other tools, like what would be the first step to start figuring this out without feeling way too much overwhelmed?
Yeah, that's a great question. And with your experience, maybe you can empathize why sometimes it's a bit difficult for me to describe, okay, what is actually Notion? What is the tool, right? Because it can be many things. But I do think that, the first step should probably be just creating an account and just trying, kind of experimenting, just to get like a tiny feel for it. But very soon you are probably starting to feel a bit overwhelmed, and so then likely the best next step would be just find a YouTuber that you kind of like. I think Thomas Frank is great. Hopefully I will at some point also start creating my own content about Notion. uh, and yeah, just follow them, because that's how I learned. And yeah, I do think that in the beginning it can really help. And then there are also many templates. And so with templates, that's like a shortcut for creating, like a more streamlined tool, like something that would be kind of like a version of other tools that you have on the market, like if you like Evernote, or if you're like Trello, like with templates, you can quickly create the first setup and start using that. So that is also, I think, like a good entryway. But with just templates, you are not going to unlock the most of what Notion has to offer, right? Which is that customizability and the fact that it's like fully tailored to your own workflow.
For me, it feels sometimes that even the templates can be really overwhelming because there are so many of them, right? And I
Yeah.
feel this template has something I want, but this other one has something else. And now how I put it together. So I usually start playing with it with the blank sheet. Maybe that's not the smartest way. And that takes me to the next question. How can we be really time efficient when it comes to picking the tools we want to use, picking those that really work for us and experimenting with them? Because I think it can also become a way of procrastination, and I certainly this is one of the way how I can procrastinate is to play with the tools because it's something I really enjoy, but sometimes it's not time efficient. So what would be your tips to make this process easier and faster, if that's even something doable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also a great and difficult question. I mean, in general, with tools, uh, the best start is always to be very clear on what are you actually trying to do, right? Because the biggest trap, like my educational background is in health education, and I used to work as educational designer, and there it's always, you're taught to think in terms of, okay, what's the educational goal? Because it can be very tempting to, oh, let's use this technique and let's use that tool, and to kind of make it fun. But you have to always consider and evaluate it in terms of what's the goal, like is it helping with the goal? And if not, well, probably you shouldn't be using that, or at least you should be mindful that this is something that you're doing just because you like it and not because it's actually helping those goals, right? Which can be fine in itself, but be very mindful of that goal. And so to return to productivity, yeah, like what are you trying to achieve? What are you maybe trying to become more efficient with? And then probably there are going to be so many online videos, demonstrations about any tool that you can think of, right? Great, like Notion and many other tools, they have their like Reddit discussions and stuff where people are discussing all the time. So exploring those rather than trying to figure it out on your own, just to get a preview, like, is this possible and stuff like that. Like, yeah, sometimes it can really help when you see someone's demonstration, I think, to understand, oh, this actually would provide all the answers. But yeah, at the end, this will help you with evaluating, I think, but in the end, I guess it's you always have to try and be just also mindful. If you know that you have this tendency, then that yeah, be mindful of that tendency and not let it overrule you. Or you can take my path where I was doing, I guess, exactly that, like always engineering the systems in a Notion. And then I was like, well, okay, I guess I should like try to earn some money. And now I can actually justify messing around in Notion by, well, I'm learning so that I can, build my skills, and that's how I get paid, right? So
What you mentioned as the first thing, being really clear about what we want to get out of it. I think it sounds very simple, but it really goes down to what's important, right? And that's what as I was mentioning on Saturday, I was playing with it. I spent 1.5 hours, and then I actually opened a new sheet, or however it's called, on Notion, and I wrote a couple of bullet points what I actually want to accomplish there, and that gave me more clarity and more direction, because it's so tempting to be exploring all the different features, but maybe I came there because I wanted to create my weekly plan template. I wanted to create a library for my content, and I wanted to create a board where I store my ideas for social media. So why should I be looking into some kind of databases that would help me to distribute the tasks per days, which I don't need, right? But I was, of course, like looking and messing around there with that. So that really helped me to see what do I want. And I think that's a great starting point. And there was another point I wanted to mention, but maybe I will come back to it. And we started the
I might,
discussion also talking about how tools can help our productivity. And I think the next question is related to it, because it's about habit. And from my perspective, if we want to be productive, we have to work on lots of different habits we have. So from your perspective, how tools, or even specifically Notion, can help us to create better habits?
hmm, that is going to depend on certain habits, or like what kind of habits is it? Because I would say maybe almost with most habits, no tool is going to help you, or to a certain degree. But yeah, like one of the probably most common templates that you can see for Notion is something like a habit tracker. And I would say for 95% of habits, that's not going to work because um, I really enjoyed the book like Tiny Habits. It's from the BJ Fogg, who is actually the Stanford professor who was behind, who taught many people who then went on to start Instagram and similar social media, and he taught them how to actually make persuasive designs. And he has this simple formula like B equals MAP. So that's behavior equals motivation, ability, and prompt. So motivation is, yeah, just like how much do you want to do it? Ability is how difficult is it? And prompt is that reminder. And it's actually kind of extrapolating from this formula that I say that the role of tools is to make the actions or the duties or the frameworks rather, the frameworks obvious and the duties easy, right? So frameworks obvious, that's the prompt element from the MAP. And the duties easy, that's the ability. So from this very formula, we get yeah, the model that I was mentioning in the beginning. And with what this also talks to is like the prompt needs to precede the action like as closely as possible, right? So if you, for most habits, you are not going to be looking into Notion just before you do that habit, right? Like you need a better reminder. For example, I used to struggle that like I have this coffee maker machine that I have to put on the stove, right? And I would often forget that I would take the machine off the stove and I wouldn't turn the stove off, right? And then just leave it burning for, yeah, sometimes even hours. So I had to build this habit that, okay, before I take it off, I have to like turn the stove off. And that's not something that Notion could help me, right? Because like I'm not going to check Notion and see, oh, what do I do before taking the coffee off? All right. So, the reminder has to come from the action itself. And that's, yeah, I would say that's one of the kind of hidden secrets of habit design is thinking really clearly about the prompt. What is going to remind you? And so, Notion is going to be good for the habits that are directly connected to your work on the computer, right? So for example, when I start my day, I always started with this like daily note that I have in Notion. And there I have just like a simple reminder, check calendar. So this reminder works because this is a note that I always come to in the morning. And it reminds me, okay, immediately check my calendar to see what meetings I have. So for this, it works, but that's because it's directly connected to the work that I do in a Notion. But for anything not done in a Notion or like at least on my computer, it's not going to help because I will not get the reminder in the right moment, right? And that's also why, for example, timed reminders with like alarms don't work because you can set alarm for like 1 p.m. to like do this habit, and then you are somehow not able because you're at a meeting or something else, and at that moment when the habit or the alarm rings, you are not able to do the habit. And so again, like you won't build the association between the prompt and the habit, and so it won't work. So yeah, you just have to get really good at choosing the prompt, choosing something that will remind you that directly precedes the action, and then also building the celebrations that will kind of like reward you, like it can be something as simple like pumping your fist, like yes. But when you do that, and you do that consistently, you're much more likely to actually remember the habit. Oh, that was quite long, sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, this thing of figuring out how to make a habit, it takes a bit of experimenting, and we need to be open to try different stuff, and we need to be open to fail without giving up, right? And I can show you something if I don't crash my microphone. So that was not planned. So this is my Zen garden. It arrived to my house on Saturday, and the story is that checking my WhatsApp and email it on phone, it was a big challenge, and I have been working on it for a while, like certainly more than a year or two, and I got much better. And just last week I had a session with my coach, and I was like, I sorted out a number of things. I don't check the phone so much, but what I still feel would need improvement is how often I check my WhatsApp and how often I check my Gmail. And then we had this coaching session, and we brainstormed, and we asked Chat GTP what clever idea it has, and the outcome of the session, which was blend of the ideas, was like, I'm going to create this Zen garden, and I will have these and I will be kind of moving them every time I check my WhatsApp and email. So that's something. It beautified my office, so it looks very nice, as you could have seen. When I did it, we did two actually. I did one with my son because yeah, that wouldn't work to do it just once for myself. So it was also a good activity for us as a family. And then I am using I can't remember how they are called in English, Schkeble.
Shells, yeah.
Shells,
It's the
yeah, the
shells.
shells. Advantages of speaking with a person from Czech Republic on a podcast. Thank you. So I moved the shells from one side, and really I feel the shift. It's not 100% perfect, but I already feel the improvement. So, and this is 2 years into, I'm trying to figure it out. So we really need to be open and figure out what works for us. It's a different thing for each of us. And I like that you said something Notion can help us is maybe if it's on computer, it can be very helpful. For other habits, we need to be creative. We need to find other ways.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking is, I was asking you how we can make this search for tools more time efficient. I came up with another answer, and maybe you can talk to that. And that's using the support of people like you, right? Like you are a Notion consultant, and yeah, we can all watch videos on YouTube. We all do it. There is nothing wrong with that. But sometimes when we want to be faster, it might be wiser to actually get support from somebody who already know and can give us personalized attention, have like 1 hour call and explain us and give us the solution to what we need. And that sometimes might be something more useful than spending hours and hours watching YouTube tutorials. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like with any service, right? Like you would totally be able to figure it out on your own for free. Like all the tutorials that you need are out there on YouTube for free. Like you don't need it, but you don't need to pay for it. But then that means that you're paying with your time, right? So it's basically just up to you. Like, what do you prefer to pay with? And, you know, for a lot of people, I think you would fall there as well. Like if you had the time, then you can actually like it would be a very enjoyable process, right? Because like you enjoy tinkering and you do like building the system. But yeah, if you don't have that time, then you can always get someone's help.
I believe it's important thing to be talking about as well, because it's not talked about much, and it's same, it applies to coaching, and this is not to advertise, right? Like it's not to say, hey, whoever listening, just start working with Kryštof or start working with Zuzana, but it's a big shift actually. And as you said, either when we do it for free, like that we watch the YouTube tutorial or try to figure it out, it's free in terms of money, but it's not free in terms of time. So for example, it's great if you enjoy it, you have time on Saturday, 100% okay. But if you would prefer to go for a hike or spend time with your partner or with your kids, it might be wiser to get help, because the money is not the only currency. And I really learned that, and since I became a coach, I invested also so much money into coaching, because I can see the value, and it really speeds up the process. Like we don't get extra
Mhm.
points for doing it alone. And usually, especially if we get older, the time is the one thing that we start to have less. So I think it's really important to be mentioning it, that sometimes it's wiser to get like the support we need and use the time for things that are more important.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. It can be, you know, I guess challenging at first if you don't have like too much, let's say, discretionary income. But even, you know, like if you have a good mentor and, you know, they can point you like in an hour-long conversation, they can give you more insight than you on your own are able to arrive to in like 9 months. And that's me speaking speaking from experience. So I'm definitely yeah, I will definitely be prioritizing, yeah, connecting to mentors, or if you can afford it, you know, actually paying for coaches or someone who can teach you. It can definitely speed up the process a lot.
100% agree. And talking about the mentoring, I can put it for you guys listening in the show notes. There is number of platform online you can find mentors, and some are paid, but there are some free. So I can share in the show notes some that are free, so you can check it out and you can use it for different things. But it's the opportunities are there, and especially like these days when everything is online, it becomes easier. And as you just said, Christopher, that it can save you so much time getting mentor, getting the advice. So yeah, it's so much easier, and I think it's so much more fun to be working with somebody else as well.
Yeah. And I would say, you know, especially if you feel like you cannot pay for someone, you can always try to get a mentor, you know, by figuring out what would help them most or what you could help them with, and just start doing it for free for them and just be like, hey, I did this for you. Like, is this helpful? And, you know, just kind of, you know, building this kind of value deposit with them. And then they will be like, hey, okay, that's enough. How can I help you? And then you're like, well, so glad you asked.
Yeah. Yeah, we can be really innovative, and I think we have been all there. We have been there when we were starting our businesses. We didn't really have money, and I remember I used to do barter with my other business friends. There are so many ways. We just need to think out of the box. So that's an encouragement for you guys listening. If you feel like you don't have the means to get the support, there are other ways you can probably do it differently without the money. So just have a thing and see what you can figure out. And talking about the action, what to do after listening to this episode, because if you know me a bit, you know I'm really action oriented, and I believe that without action there is not going to be change. So Christopher, if there was one thing you would want listeners to do after listening to this conversation, what would it be?
I think probably it would be to start thinking about productivity in general and what they do in general, maybe in a more systematic way, or like think more in systems. So the framework that I shared in the beginning, right? That every system, you have the framework, you have the duties, and you have the tools. And also Notion in itself, like working with that, when you really start playing around with that, it also teaches you this more systems mindset. And I think that can really help to start looking at the whole process, your whole workflow from a more kind of holistic point of view. Because a lot of the times, you might be surprised where the inefficiencies are coming from. And the biggest maybe mistakes are I have to work harder, or I need a better tool, right? And then you try a different tool and it still doesn't help, so you try another tool and it still doesn't help. So maybe then, it's about rethinking, okay, maybe the flaw is actually somewhere else. So actually collecting these frameworks can be really helpful. So yeah, thinking more in this like systematic way, like what am I trying to do in general, like the whole workflow, what are the steps that I'm trying to accomplish? And so then thinking, okay, and how can I use a tool to both remind me of it and to make it easier? Yeah, and then just reviewing that, iterating that, like my Notion, I've been using it for 4 years and I'm constantly still tweaking the system. It's like never done. It will never be done because my situation changes, Notion changes, like everything changes. So it's about also adapting it and, not getting too caught up or attached to any like perfect version because it does not exist. So yeah, just keep
That's
playing and
true.
evolving.
Hmm. And a beautiful ending, I think, of our conversation, also the fact that once we create one system, it's not going to last forever because we change, the situation change, and we have to do this constant changing of our system as well. So, Christopher, if somebody is interested in exploring Notion or maybe start with Notion, I know you have a small gift for people who are listening. So, what is that, a small gift, and then how people can find you?
I think at the moment, the best way to find me is on LinkedIn, just Kryštof Ekl, or even my website, which is down for the moment, but that's Kryštof-Ekl, just ekl.com. And yeah, the gift, which is also pinned on my LinkedIn in the featured, it's a template that I made, which tries to incorporate many of these, many of the core frameworks that I've been using. So getting things done in journaling and stuff like that. And admittedly, it's quite advanced already, so it can it does not really help with this thing like not being overwhelming. But there, I did record a workshop, which is where I was onboarding people and walking through both the getting things done core framework and how to start using that template. So it's all there and it's for free. So yeah, if you're curious to explore it, definitely feel free to download it and feel free to reach out and ask and say hi.
Okay, thank you so much. We didn't have chance to speak about the feet in different countries, which is not connected to this topic, but it's something which connects all of us. But yeah, I think maybe you can just share quickly before we go where you are calling and where you are from, so we can
All right.
picture you on our maps in the head.
Yeah, I'm originally from Prague in Czechia, but at the moment I'm in Oulu in Finland. I've been here for the last 3 years. So if you can imagine the gulf between Sweden and Finland, it's at the very top of it. So now we still in the summer don't really have night. But I will be going home at least for a couple months and moving out of Oulu in probably end of summer or sometime in autumn. But I don't think I will stay there just yet. So who knows where life will take me next.
Anyway, we send greetings to Finland for now, and it was my pleasure having you, and thank you for sharing all the tips with us.
Thank you. It was great. I really enjoyed it.